The Organized Life, a 21-day system to build discipline, order, and real success. Published by Timeless Audiobook. Introduction. A disorganized life quietly steals time, energy, and potential without ever announcing itself as the real problem. It shows up as unfinished tasks, constant mental noise, and the exhausting feeling of always being behind, no matter how hard you try. You may wake up with good intentions, but by the end of the day, things feel scattered, incomplete, and out of control. Over time, this silent chaos doesn't just affect your productivity, it begins to shape your identity. Disorganization is rarely about laziness, it's about the absence of structure. When there is no system to guide your actions, everything depends on mood, motivation, and temporary bursts of effort. And the truth is, motivation fades. When it does, the chaos returns. This is why so many people feel stuck in cycles of starting over, trying again, and falling back into the same patterns. An organized life is not about perfection or rigid routines. It is about creating a system that brings clarity, direction, and control into your daily actions. When your life is organized, decisions become easier, focus becomes sharper, and progress becomes inevitable. Instead of reacting to everything around you, you begin to lead your day with intention. In this audiobook, we will rebuild your life through a simple yet powerful 21-day system. Step by step, you will learn how to eliminate chaos, build structure, and develop the kind of discipline that creates real, lasting success. Each chapter will guide you through practical actions that transform not just what you do, but who you become. This is not about doing more, it is about doing what matters, with clarity and consistency. Let's begin. Chapter 1. Confront the mess you've been avoiding. Disorganization doesn't begin in your schedule. It begins in what you choose not to look at. The missed tasks, the cluttered desk, the messages you keep ignoring, the plans you never fully commit to, all of it slowly builds into a kind of quiet pressure. You feel it when you wake up, even before your day starts. There's a weight you can't fully explain, but it's there, reminding you that something isn't right. And yet, instead of facing it directly, it's easier to stay busy, to distract yourself, to tell yourself you'll fix everything soon. But soon is where most people stay stuck. Confronting the mess in your life is uncomfortable because it forces you to see the truth without excuses. It's not just about physical clutter. It's about the unfinished decisions, the lack of priorities, the habits that slowly pull you away from control. Avoidance feels safe in the moment, but over time it creates a life that feels overwhelming and directionless, and the longer you wait, the more complicated everything seems. Daniel Brooks understood this better than anyone. He was a 34-year-old marketing manager working at a growing company, responsible for multiple campaigns, deadlines, and client expectations. On the outside, his life looked stable. He had a good job, a steady income, and a career that many people would admire. But behind the scenes, things were falling apart. His inbox was filled with unread emails, his task list kept growing without any clear order, and his days were spent reacting instead of planning. Every morning, Daniel would open his laptop and feel immediate stress. He didn't know where to start, so he jumped from one task to another, hoping to catch up. But catching up never happened. Deadlines were missed, small mistakes started appearing in his work, and his confidence slowly began to drop. He worked longer hours, thinking that more time would solve the problem. It didn't. The real issue wasn't time, it was the chaos he refused to confront. One evening, after another exhausting day, Daniel sat at his desk long after everyone had left. For the first time, he stopped trying to fix things quickly. Instead, he decided to look at everything honestly. He opened his email, reviewed his tasks, and wrote down everything that was unfinished, delayed, or unclear. It wasn't pretty. The list was longer than he expected, but something important happened in that moment. He stopped avoiding. That was the turning point. You don't fix a disorganized life by jumping straight into solutions. You fix it by seeing it clearly. When you confront the mess, you take away its power. What once felt overwhelming starts to become visible, and what is visible can be controlled. Most people never reach this point because they are too focused on escaping discomfort. But growth always begins with honesty. Take a moment and think about your own life. Where are you avoiding reality? Is it in your work, where tasks are piling up without direction? Is it in your personal habits, where small inconsistencies are slowly becoming bigger problems? Or is it in your mind, where too many thoughts are competing for your attention, leaving you mentally exhausted? Clarity doesn't come from doing more, it comes from seeing more. When Daniel wrote everything down, he didn't fix his life that night, but he did something more important. He created awareness. The next day, instead of jumping into random tasks, he started with a clear understanding of what needed attention. It wasn't perfect, and it didn't change overnight, but it was different. For the first time in months, he felt a small sense of control returning. That's where your transformation begins. You don't need to organize everything today. You don't need a perfect plan. What you need is the willingness to stop avoiding and start facing. Because the moment you confront the mess, you stop being controlled by it. You begin to take ownership of your time, your actions, and your direction. This is day one of your organized life. Not a day of perfection, but a day of awareness. And awareness, when acted upon consistently, becomes the foundation of everything that follows. Chapter 2. Clear your space to clear your head. Clarity rarely begins in the mind. It begins in what you see. The space around you is not just a background to your life. It is a silent influence that shapes how you think, how you feel, and how you act. When your environment is cluttered, your attention becomes scattered. When your surroundings feel chaotic, your mind follows the same pattern. You may not notice it immediately, but over time, that constant visual noise drains your focus and weakens your ability to stay consistent. A messy space sends a subtle message. Things are unfinished, things are out of control, and nothing is truly in order. You carry that message into your work, your decisions, and your habits. It becomes harder to sit down and concentrate, harder to prioritize, and easier to delay what matters. On the other hand, a clean and organized environment does something powerful. It reduces friction, it removes distractions before they even begin. It creates a sense of calm that allows your mind to focus on one thing at a time. This is not about perfection, it is about alignment. Your environment should support the kind of life you are trying to build. Ethan Cole learned this lesson the hard way. He was a remote software developer working from his apartment, and on paper, his situation looked ideal. He had flexibility, no commute, and complete control over his schedule. But his daily reality was very different. His desk was filled with old coffee cups, scattered papers, tangled cables, and random items he never bothered to put away. His room blurred the line between work and rest, and nothing had a clear place. Every time Ethan sat down to work, he felt a resistance he couldn't fully explain. He would open his laptop, glance at the mess around him, and suddenly feel the urge to check his phone, scroll for a few minutes, or delay starting altogether. What should have been simple tasks stretched into hours. Deadlines became stressful. His confidence started to slip. Not because he lacked skill, but because he lacked clarity. For a long time, he believed the problem was discipline. He thought he just needed to push harder, focus more, and try again the next day. But the real issue was sitting right in front of him, and he kept ignoring it. One morning, after missing another important deadline, Ethan decided to do something different. Instead of forcing himself to work, he stepped back and looked at his space honestly. Not quickly, not casually, but with intention. He saw the clutter, the disorganization, the lack of structure. For the first time, he realized that his environment wasn't neutral. It was working against him. He didn't overcomplicate the solution. He didn't try to redesign everything at once. He started small. He cleared his desk completely, removing everything that wasn't essential. He wiped it clean, arranged only the items he actually needed, and gave each one a specific place. He organized his cables, threw away what he didn't need, and created a clear boundary between his work area and the rest of his room. It took less than an hour, but the impact was immediate. When Ethan sat down again, something felt different. There was no visual noise pulling his attention away, no clutter reminding him of unfinished tasks, just a clean space and a clear starting point. For the first time in weeks, he began working without resistance. One task led to another. Focus came naturally. By the end of the day, he had completed more than he had in the previous 3 days combined. The change wasn't magical. It was structural. Your environment either supports your discipline or silently destroys it. There is no middle ground. Every object in your space either serves a purpose or becomes a distraction. Every surface either invites focus or invites delay. And the more clutter you allow, the harder it becomes to take control of your actions. Look around your own space right now, not casually, but intentionally. What do you see? Are there things that don't belong? Items you haven't used in days, weeks, or even months? Surfaces that feel crowded instead of clear? These are not small details. They are signals that shape your behavior every single day. Clearing your space is not just about cleaning, it is about making decisions, deciding what matters and what doesn't, deciding what stays and what goes, deciding that your environment will no longer be a source of distraction, but a foundation for focus. You don't need a perfect room. You don't need expensive furniture or a complete redesign. What you need is simplicity, a clear desk, a defined space, a system where everything has a place and nothing is left to chance. When your environment becomes intentional, your actions begin to follow. Ethan didn't become perfectly organized overnight, but from that day forward, he maintained one rule: never let his space return to chaos. At the end of each day, he spent a few minutes resetting his desk, putting things back in place, and preparing for the next morning. It became a small habit, but one that reinforced control and consistency, and that's the real power of this step. You are not just cleaning your space. You are sending a message to yourself, a message that says, I am in control. I decide how my environment looks. I decide how my day begins. That message, repeated daily, begins to shape your identity. This is day 2 of your organized life. Not a day of perfection, but a day of alignment. When your space becomes clear, your mind follows. And when your mind is clear, your actions become stronger, sharper, and more intentional. Chapter 3. Stop relying on motivation. Install a system. Motivation feels powerful in the moment, but it is one of the least reliable forces you can build your life on. It comes and goes without warning. Some days you feel driven, focused, and ready to take on everything. Other days, even the simplest task feels heavy and difficult. When your life depends on how you feel each day, consistency becomes impossible. You start strong, lose momentum, and then find yourself starting over again. This cycle repeats so often that it begins to feel normal. But it's not normal, it's unstable. The truth is, successful people don't rely on motivation, they rely on systems. A system doesn't ask how you feel, it doesn't wait for the perfect mood, it simply tells you what to do next. When your actions are guided by a clear structure, you remove the need to constantly decide, hesitate, or negotiate with yourself. You don't wake up wondering whether you should start. You wake up knowing exactly what comes first. This shift changes everything. Marcus Reed understood this struggle deeply. He was a fitness trainer who genuinely loved what he did. He had the knowledge, the experience, and the passion to help others transform their lives. But his own life lacked consistency. Some weeks he would follow a strict routine, waking up early, training clients, working on his own fitness, and planning his day. Other weeks, everything would fall apart. He would wake up late, skip workouts, delay important tasks, and promise himself he would get back on track tomorrow. Tomorrow rarely came. Marcus kept blaming his lack of discipline, thinking something was wrong with his mindset. He consumed motivational content, listened to inspiring talks, and tried to push himself harder. It worked temporarily, but the pattern never changed. The problem wasn't that he lacked motivation. The problem was that he depended on it. One day, after another inconsistent week, Marcus decided to approach things differently. Instead of asking, "How do I stay motivated?" he asked a better question: "How do I make this automatic?" That question led him to something he had been ignoring: a system. He started small. Instead of trying to fix everything at once, he focused on building a simple daily structure. He set a fixed wake-up time, not based on how he felt, but as a rule. He created a basic plan for his mornings, his client sessions, and his personal workouts. He didn't overcomplicate it. He didn't try to be perfect. He just made it clear and repeatable. At first, it felt rigid, uncomfortable even. There were mornings when he didn't feel like getting up, days when he wanted to skip his routine, moments when the old habit of relying on motivation tried to pull him back. But this time, he didn't negotiate. He followed the system. Something surprising began to happen. The more he followed the structure, the less he needed motivation. Tasks that once required effort started to feel normal. Decisions that once drained his energy became automatic. His days became predictable in a positive way, not boring, but controlled. Instead of reacting to how he felt, he began acting based on what he had already decided. This is the power of a system. A system removes friction. It eliminates unnecessary thinking. It creates a path that you follow regardless of mood or circumstances. When you rely on motivation, every action feels like a new decision. When you rely on a system, your actions become part of a flow. Think about your own life. How many things do you delay simply because you don't feel like doing them? How often do you wait for the right moment to start? That waiting is what keeps you stuck. The right moment rarely arrives on its own. It is created by structure. Installing a system doesn't mean controlling every minute of your day. It means defining the key parts that matter most. Your morning, your work blocks, your priorities, your routines. These are the anchors that hold your day together. Without them, everything drifts. With them, everything aligns. Marcus didn't transform overnight, but within a few weeks the difference was clear. His energy improved, his consistency increased, and his confidence returned. Not because he became more motivated, but because he became more structured. He no longer depended on how he felt. He depended on what he had built. And that's the shift you need to make. Stop asking yourself if you feel ready. Stop waiting for motivation to carry you forward. It won't. Instead, build something that carries you even when you don't feel like moving. A simple, clear, repeatable system that guides your actions every day. This is day 3 of your organized life. Not a day of perfection, but a day of structure. When you install a system, you remove uncertainty. And when uncertainty disappears, progress becomes steady, predictable, and real. Chapter 4. Lock in a non-negotiable morning routine. The way your day begins quietly determines how it unfolds. Before the world makes demands on your time, before messages start arriving, before distractions pull your attention in different directions, there is a small window of control that belongs entirely to you. That window is your morning. And if you don't take ownership of it, something else will. A weak morning creates a reactive day. You wake up without structure, reach for your phone, scroll through updates, and suddenly your mind is filled with noise before you've even decided what matters. You start late, rush through tasks, and spend the rest of the day trying to catch up. It feels like you're moving, but not progressing. This pattern repeats so often that it begins to feel normal, even though it slowly drains your focus and your confidence. A strong morning does the opposite. It gives you direction before distraction. It reduces the number of decisions you need to make early in the day. It creates momentum that carries forward into everything else you do. When your morning is structured, your mind becomes clearer, your actions become sharper, and your day becomes intentional instead of accidental. This is not about waking up at an extreme hour or following a complicated routine. It is about making your start non-negotiable. Ryan Mitchell learned this lesson after years of struggling to stay consistent. He was a freelance writer trying to build his career, but his days lacked structure. He would wake up at different times, often reaching for his phone before even getting out of bed. What started as a quick check would turn into 30 minutes, sometimes an hour. By the time he finally sat down to work, his mind was scattered and his energy was low. He told himself he would make up for it later in the day, but later came with its own distractions. Emails, small tasks, interruptions, everything seemed urgent. Writing, the one thing that truly mattered, kept getting pushed further back. Days passed with little progress. Weeks passed with growing frustration. He began to question his discipline, his ability, even his future. The problem wasn't his talent, it was his start. One morning, after missing another personal deadline, Ryan decided to change one thing. Not everything, just his morning. He set a fixed wake-up time and made a simple rule: no phone for the first hour. That hour would belong to him, and only him. At first it felt uncomfortable. The urge to check notifications was strong, the temptation to delay was real. But he stayed with it. He didn't try to do too much. He kept his routine simple and repeatable. Wake up at the same time, drink water, sit down with a clear mind, begin writing, even if it wasn't perfect. The goal wasn't excellence in that moment. The goal was consistency. Something shifted within days. Without the distraction of his phone, his mind felt quieter. Without the delay of indecision, his actions became faster. He no longer wasted energy figuring out how to start. The start was already decided, and once he began, it became easier to continue. His writing improved, not because he suddenly became more skilled, but because he gave himself the space to focus. Over time, this routine became automatic. He no longer questioned whether he should wake up or start working. It was simply what he did. His mornings stopped being a struggle and became a source of control, and that control extended into the rest of his day. This is what a non-negotiable morning routine does. It removes the need to rely on willpower. It eliminates early confusion. It gives you a clear entry point into your day. Instead of asking, "What should I do now?" you already know. And that clarity saves more energy than you realize. Your routine doesn't need to look like anyone else's. It just needs to be yours. A fixed wake-up time, a few intentional actions, a clear starting point. That's enough. What matters is not complexity, but consistency. The simpler your routine, the easier it is to follow, especially on the days when you don't feel like it. Look at your current mornings. Are they structured or are they reactive? Do you begin your day with intention, or do you allow distractions to decide for you? These small choices are not insignificant. They are the foundation of everything that follows. Ryan didn't transform overnight, but within a few weeks, the difference was undeniable. He was producing more work, feeling more focused, and carrying a sense of control into his day that he had never experienced before. Not because he changed everything, but because he locked in one powerful habit, and that's where your change begins. You don't need to perfect your entire life. You need to protect your first hour, make it non-negotiable. Remove the decisions, remove the distractions, and create a simple path that you follow every morning. This is day 4 of your organized life. Not a day of perfection, but a day of intention. When your morning becomes structured, your day follows. And when your days begin with clarity, your life starts to move in the direction you choose. Chapter 5. Hunt down and eliminate time killers. Time is rarely lost in big, obvious ways. It disappears quietly, in small, unnoticed moments that feel harmless at first. A quick scroll through your phone, a short break that turns into 30 minutes, a task that wasn't planned but somehow takes over your attention. Individually, these moments seem insignificant, but when they add up, they quietly steal hours from your day, leaving you wondering where all your time went. This is the nature of time killers. They don't demand your attention aggressively. They slip in unnoticed, disguised as relaxation, curiosity, or even productivity. And because they don't feel like serious problems, you rarely question them. You allow them to exist, to repeat, to grow. Over time, they become part of your routine without your awareness. The danger is not just the time they consume, it's the focus they break. Every time you shift your attention away from what matters, it takes energy to come back. Your mind doesn't reset instantly, it lingers, it drifts, and the deeper the distraction, the harder it becomes to regain clarity. What should have taken 1 hour stretches into 3, not because the work is difficult, but because your attention keeps getting pulled away. Kevin Turner lived in this cycle without realizing it. He was a sales executive known for being busy all the time. His schedule was full, his phone was always in his hand, and his day was packed with activity. From the outside, it looked like he was working hard, but his results told a different story. His sales numbers were inconsistent, his follow-ups were delayed, and important opportunities slipped through the cracks. Kevin often told himself he needed more time. He believed that if he could just work longer hours, everything would improve. But even when he extended his day, nothing really changed. He was still rushing, still missing details, still feeling behind. One afternoon, after losing a major client due to a missed follow-up, Kevin finally stopped and looked at his day honestly, not from a place of frustration, but from a place of observation. He started tracking how he actually spent his time, not what he planned to do, but what he actually did. What he discovered was uncomfortable. Between calls, he would check his phone, telling himself it would only take a minute. Those minutes often turned into 10 or 15. He responded to non-urgent messages immediately, interrupting his own workflow. He jumped into tasks that felt easy instead of focusing on the ones that mattered most. He allowed small distractions to dictate the pace of his day. None of these actions seemed serious on their own, but together they created a pattern of constant interruption. His day wasn't structured, it was scattered. Kevin didn't try to eliminate every distraction overnight. Instead, he focused on awareness first. He began identifying his biggest time killers, the habits that appeared most often and caused the most disruption. For him, it was his phone, unplanned tasks, and the habit of reacting immediately to everything. Once he saw them clearly, he started making simple adjustments. He placed his phone out of reach during focused work periods. He created specific times to check messages instead of responding instantly. He defined clear blocks of time for his most important tasks and protected those blocks from interruption. At first, it felt uncomfortable. There was a strong urge to check, to respond, to break the structure. But over time, something shifted. His focus improved. Tasks that once took hours were completed in less time. His day began to feel more controlled, less chaotic. This is what happens when you remove time killers. You don't suddenly gain more hours, you regain the ones you were losing, and those recovered hours feel different. They are intentional, focused, and productive. They move your life forward instead of keeping you in place. Take a moment and think about your own day. Where does your time quietly disappear? Is it in your phone, where minutes turn into hours without notice? Is it in constant interruptions that break your concentration? Or is it in tasks that feel urgent but add little value? You don't need to eliminate everything. You need to identify what matters most. Awareness is your first weapon. Once you see your time killers clearly, they lose their power. They are no longer hidden. They are choices. And once something becomes a choice, you can change it. Kevin didn't become perfectly disciplined overnight, but he became intentional. He stopped allowing distractions to control his day. He created boundaries, not to restrict himself, but to protect what mattered. And as a result, his performance improved, his stress decreased, and his confidence returned. This is not about working harder, it is about working with clarity. This is day 5 of your organized life, not a day of perfection, but a day of awareness and control. When you hunt down and eliminate the small things that steal your time, you create space for the things that truly move your life forward. And that space is where real progress begins. Chapter 6. Cut the noise and choose what actually matters. A busy life can look productive on the surface, but busyness is often just noise. It fills your day, drains your energy, and gives you the illusion of progress while quietly pulling you away from what actually matters. When everything feels important, nothing truly is. You move from one task to another, constantly occupied, yet at the end of the day, you struggle to point to anything meaningful that moved forward. The problem is not that you have too much to do. The problem is that you haven't decided what deserves your attention. Clarity begins with elimination, not adding more, not organizing more, but removing what doesn't belong. Every task, every commitment, every responsibility competes for your time. If you don't choose what matters, everything will try to matter, and when everything matters, you become overwhelmed, distracted, and ineffective. Jason Miller lived inside that noise every day. He was a project manager responsible for multiple teams, deadlines, and ongoing tasks. His calendar was full, his inbox was constantly active, and his phone rarely stopped ringing. From the outside, he looked like someone in control, but internally, he felt like he was constantly chasing things he could never catch. His day started with urgency and ended with exhaustion. He would jump into emails, respond to messages, attend meetings, and handle small problems as they appeared. It felt productive because he was always doing something. But the important work, the kind that required focus and deep thinking, kept getting delayed. It was always pushed to later, a time that rarely arrived. Over time, Jason began to feel stuck. Despite all his effort, nothing seemed to improve. Projects moved slowly, stress increased, and his sense of control disappeared. He wasn't lacking effort, he was lacking direction. One evening, after another overwhelming day, Jason sat down and looked at everything he was responsible for. Not quickly, not casually, but with intention. He listed out his tasks, his responsibilities, his ongoing projects. The list was long, but what stood out was not the volume, it was the lack of clarity. Everything was mixed together. Urgent tasks sat next to important ones. Small responsibilities carried the same weight as critical priorities. For the first time, he asked a simple question: what actually matters? That question forced him to think differently. Instead of trying to manage everything, he began identifying what truly moved his work forward. Not what felt urgent, not what others demanded, but what actually created results. He realized that only a small portion of his tasks had a real impact. The rest were noise, necessary at times, but not worthy of constant attention. This realization changed how he approached his day. Jason began cutting the noise. He didn't eliminate his responsibilities, but he redefined their importance. He separated what was essential from what was secondary. He stopped treating every message as urgent. He reduced unnecessary meetings. He delayed tasks that didn't require immediate action. And most importantly, he created space for the work that mattered most. At first, it felt uncomfortable. Ignoring certain tasks created a sense of guilt. Saying no or delaying responses felt unnatural. But as he stayed consistent, something shifted. His days became clearer. Instead of reacting constantly, he began acting with intention. He knew what needed to be done, and he focused on it without distraction. The results followed. Projects started moving forward faster. His stress decreased. His confidence returned, not because he was doing more, but because he was doing what mattered. This is the power of cutting the noise. Your life doesn't become organized by adding more structure to everything. It becomes organized when you decide what deserves your structure. Not every task needs your attention. Not every opportunity needs your time. Not every request needs your immediate response. The ability to choose is what creates control. Take a moment and think about your own responsibilities. How many of them truly matter? How many of them directly contribute to your goals, your growth, or your progress? And how many are simply filling your time? This is not about ignoring your responsibilities. It is about understanding their value. When you see clearly, you stop overcommitting. You stop overloading your day. You begin to create space for focus, for deep work, for meaningful progress. Jason didn't become less busy overnight, but he became more intentional. He stopped trying to do everything and started focusing on the few things that actually made a difference. That shift didn't just improve his productivity, it changed how he experienced his work. And the same shift is available to you. You don't need to manage everything, you need to choose what matters. Once you do, everything else becomes easier to handle, easier to schedule, and easier to let go when necessary. This is day 6 of your organized life. Not a day of perfection, but a day of clarity. When you cut the noise, you create space, And in that space, you finally gain the ability to focus on what truly moves your life forward. Chapter 7. Win the day by limiting your focus to 3 priorities. When your day begins without clear priorities, everything competes for your attention. Small tasks feel just as important as meaningful ones. You respond to what appears urgent, not what truly matters. By the end of the day, you may feel exhausted, even busy, but deep down, you know you didn't move forward in a meaningful way. This is the hidden cost of trying to do too much at once. Focus is not about doing more, it is about doing less, but doing it with intention. The mind does not perform well under constant overload. When you give yourself too many tasks, your attention becomes divided. You start switching between activities, losing depth, losing clarity, and losing momentum. What should take 1 hour stretches into several. What should feel simple begins to feel overwhelming. The problem is not your ability. The problem is the lack of limits. This is where the rule of 3 changes everything. Limiting your day to 3 clear priorities forces you to think differently. It forces you to decide what actually matters before your day begins. Not 10 things, not an endless list, but 3. When you do this, your mind stops wandering, your energy becomes focused, your actions become deliberate, and most importantly, your progress becomes visible. Chris Bennett learned this through frustration. He was a team leader managing multiple projects, each with its own deadlines and demands. His days were filled with meetings, emails, quick fixes, and constant communication. He worked long hours and rarely stopped moving, yet his progress always felt incomplete. Projects dragged on, tasks remained half-finished, and the pressure kept building. Every morning, Chris would create a long to-do list, believing that writing everything down would help him stay organized. But the list became a source of stress instead of clarity. As the day progressed, he would jump from one task to another, trying to keep up with everything. By evening, most of the important work remained unfinished, while smaller, less meaningful tasks had taken over his time. One day, after missing an important project milestone, Chris realized that the problem wasn't effort, it was focus. He was trying to carry too much at once, and as a result, he was dropping everything. Instead of adding more structure, he simplified everything. The next morning, he looked at his long list and asked himself a different question. If I could only complete 3 things today, what would they be? That question forced him to think clearly. It forced him to prioritize based on impact, not urgency. He selected 3 tasks that would move his work forward in a meaningful way. Then he made a decision that felt uncomfortable at first. Everything else would wait. Throughout the day, distractions still appeared. Messages came in, small tasks demanded attention, and the urge to switch focus was strong. But Chris returned to his 3 priorities. Again and again, each time he felt pulled away, he reminded himself of what truly mattered. By the end of the day, something unexpected happened. For the first time in a long time, he completed the most important work. Not everything, but the right things, and that created a sense of progress he hadn't felt before. When you reduce your priorities, you increase your effectiveness. Your mind becomes less scattered. Your actions become more intentional. Instead of reacting to everything, you begin directing your energy toward what truly counts. And that shift changes not just your productivity, but your confidence. Think about your own day. How often do you try to do everything at once? How often do you create long lists that feel overwhelming before you even begin? That approach doesn't create control, it creates pressure. The rule of 3 removes that pressure. It gives you a clear starting point and a clear target. It allows you to measure your day not by how busy you were, but by what you actually completed. And over time, those completed priorities begin to compound into real progress. This does not mean you ignore everything else. It means you give your best energy to what matters most first. Once your priorities are done, you can handle the rest with a clearer mind and less stress. But without priorities, everything blends together and nothing stands out. Chris didn't eliminate all his responsibilities, but he changed how he approached them. He stopped trying to do everything and started focusing on what mattered. That simple shift brought clarity, reduced stress, and improved his results more than any complex system ever had. And the same approach can transform your days. You don't need more time, you need better focus. You need to decide, before your day begins, what deserves your energy. And once you decide, you need to protect it. This is day 7 of your organized life. Not a day of perfection, but a day of clarity and intention. When you limit your focus, you increase your power. And when your actions are focused, your progress becomes real, steady, and undeniable. Chapter 8. Build discipline through small, repeatable actions. Discipline is often misunderstood as something intense, something that requires force, willpower, and constant effort. Many people believe they need to make big changes, take massive action, and push themselves beyond their limits to become disciplined, but that approach rarely lasts. It creates short bursts of effort, followed by long periods of inconsistency, and over time it leads to frustration more than progress. Real discipline is quieter than that. It is built in small, repeatable actions that don't demand attention but create consistency. It is not about doing something extreme once. It is about doing something simple again and again until it becomes part of who you are. The problem is not that people can't take action. The problem is that they try to take too much action at once. When you overload yourself with big goals and unrealistic expectations, you create resistance. Your mind sees the effort required and begins to hesitate. You delay, you negotiate, you promise to start later, and even when you do start, it feels heavy, difficult, and unsustainable. This is why so many people begin with excitement and end with disappointment. Small actions remove that resistance. When something is simple, clear, and easy to repeat, your mind doesn't fight it. You don't need motivation to begin. You don't need to prepare yourself mentally. You just start. And once you start, it becomes easier to continue. Over time, these small actions build momentum, and that momentum becomes discipline. Alex Carter experienced this shift firsthand. He was a college student struggling to stay consistent with his studies and daily routine. Some days he would feel motivated, sit down and study for hours. Other days he would avoid his work completely, telling himself he would make up for it later. His schedule was unpredictable, his habits were inconsistent, and his results reflected that. He believed he needed more discipline, but every time he tried to fix his life, he aimed too high. He created strict schedules, long study sessions, and ambitious plans. For a few days he would follow them perfectly. Then the pressure would build, and everything would fall apart. Each time he felt more frustrated, more convinced that he lacked the ability to stay consistent. One evening, after falling behind again, Alex decided to try something different. Instead of aiming for perfection, he aimed for simplicity. He set a rule for himself: study for just 30 minutes every day, no matter what. Not 2 hours, not an entire evening, just 30 minutes. At first it felt too small to matter, but that was the point. There was no pressure, no overwhelming expectation. It was easy to start, even on days when he didn't feel like it. And because it was easy to start, he began to show up consistently. Something unexpected happened. On some days, those 30 minutes turned into an hour. On other days, he stopped exactly at 30. But what mattered most was not the duration, it was the consistency. For the first time, he was building a pattern that didn't depend on how he felt. That pattern changed everything. As days passed, his confidence began to grow. Not because he was doing more, but because he was doing something every day. His mind started to trust him. The resistance he once felt began to fade. Studying was no longer a question or a struggle. It became a part of his routine. This is how discipline is built. It is not forced. It is earned through repetition. Each small action reinforces your identity. Each consistent step sends a message: I am someone who shows up. And over time, that message becomes your reality. Think about your own habits. Are they built on intensity or consistency? Do you rely on motivation to take action, or do you have simple actions that you repeat regardless of how you feel? The difference between these two approaches is the difference between temporary change and lasting transformation. Small actions may seem insignificant in the moment, but they compound over time. One day becomes a week becomes a month. And before you realize it, you have built something strong, something stable, something that doesn't break under pressure. Alex didn't become perfect overnight, but he became consistent. And that consistency improved his academic performance, reduced his stress, and gave him a sense of control he had never experienced before. Not because he worked harder, but because he worked smarter. You don't need to do everything today. You don't need to transform your entire life at once. You need to start small and stay consistent. Choose actions that are simple enough to repeat and meaningful enough to matter. Then commit to them, not with intensity, but with patience. This is day 8 of your organized life, not a day of perfection, but a day of consistency. When you build discipline through small, repeatable actions, you create a foundation that cannot be shaken, and from that foundation, everything else begins to grow. Chapter 9. Design evenings that set up tomorrow's success. The end of your day quietly shapes the beginning of your next one. What you do in the evening doesn't just affect how you rest. It determines how clearly you start, how prepared you feel, and how much control you carry into tomorrow. Yet most people treat their evenings as unstructured time, a period to unwind without intention, leaving the next day to begin in confusion and delay. A disorganized evening creates a disorganized morning. You wake up unsure of what to do, searching for direction, wasting time deciding where to begin. That lack of clarity follows you throughout the day, slowing your progress and increasing your stress. But when your evening is intentional, your next day begins with momentum already in place. Evenings are not just about ending the day. They are about preparing for what comes next. Laura Hayes understood this better than most, but only after struggling for a long time. She was a hospital nurse working unpredictable shifts, often coming home exhausted, both physically and mentally. Her evenings were unstructured. Some nights she would collapse onto the couch, scrolling through her phone until late. Other nights she would try to relax but end up thinking about everything she hadn't done or needed to do the next day. She would wake up feeling rushed, sometimes disoriented, often unprepared. Simple things like finding her clothes, organizing her bag, or remembering her schedule became sources of stress. She carried that stress into her work, making her already demanding job even harder. For a long time, Laura believed her schedule was the problem. She thought that if her shifts were more predictable, everything would improve. But the real issue wasn't her schedule, it was how she used the time she did have. One evening, after a particularly overwhelming day, she decided to make a small change. Instead of letting her evening happen randomly, she created a simple routine. Nothing complicated, just a few intentional actions before she went to bed. She started by preparing for the next day. She laid out her clothes, packed her bag, and reviewed her schedule. It took less than 15 minutes, but it removed the need to think about those things in the morning. Then she added a second step, writing down what needed to be done the next day. Not a long list, just a few clear priorities. This gave her mind a sense of closure, knowing that nothing important would be forgotten. Finally, she created a simple habit to end her day, stepping away from her phone at least 30 minutes before sleep. That time allowed her mind to slow down, to disconnect from constant stimulation, and to rest properly. At first, it felt unnecessary, small, almost too simple to make a difference. But within a few days, something changed. Her mornings became easier. She no longer rushed through simple decisions. She woke up knowing exactly what needed to be done. There was a sense of calm, a sense of control that hadn't been there before, and that calm carried into her work. She felt more prepared, more focused, and less overwhelmed. This is the power of a well-designed evening. You are not just ending your day, you are setting the stage for your next one. When you take a few minutes to prepare, you remove friction from tomorrow, you eliminate unnecessary decisions, you give yourself a clear starting point, and that clarity saves more time and energy than you realize. Think about how your current evenings look. Do they help you prepare, or do they leave you scattered? Do you end your day with intention, or do you drift into sleep without direction? These small habits may seem insignificant, but they shape how you experience your mornings, and your mornings shape everything else. Designing your evening does not require complexity, it requires awareness. A few simple actions repeated consistently can create a powerful effect. Prepare what you can, plan what matters, give your mind a chance to rest. That's enough. Laura didn't change her job, she didn't change her schedule, but she changed how she ended her day. And that one shift brought structure into a life that once felt unpredictable. You can do the same. You don't need to control every detail of your life, but you can control how your day ends, and when you take control of your evenings, you begin to take control of your mornings as well. This is day 9 of your organized life. Not a day of perfection, but a day of preparation. When your evenings become intentional, your mornings become easier, and when your mornings are clear, your entire day begins to move with purpose. Chapter 10. Get everything out of your head and onto paper. A crowded mind cannot produce clear action. When everything lives inside your head, tasks, ideas, reminders, worries, it creates a constant background noise that never fully stops. You try to remember everything, keep track of everything, and manage everything mentally. But the human mind is not designed to store and organize that much information at once. It is designed to think, not to hold. When your mind becomes a storage space, clarity disappears. You begin to feel overwhelmed without knowing exactly why. You jump between thoughts, forget small details, and struggle to focus on one task at a time. Even when you sit down to work, your attention drifts because part of your mind is still trying to remember something else. This is mental clutter. And unlike physical clutter, it is invisible, which makes it even more dangerous. The solution is simple, but often ignored. You must take everything out of your head and place it somewhere external, on paper, in a notebook, or in a system you trust. The moment you do this, your mind begins to clear, not because the work is gone, but because the responsibility of remembering is no longer yours. Nathan Scott learned this after reaching a breaking point. He was a small business owner managing multiple responsibilities, clients, finances, ideas for growth, daily operations, and personal commitments. His mind was always active, constantly jumping from one thought to another. He would wake up thinking about tasks he needed to complete, spend his day reacting to problems, and go to sleep with a mind that refused to rest. At first, he believed this was part of being productive. He thought that constantly thinking about his work meant he was dedicated, but over time the pressure built. He started forgetting important details, missing small deadlines, and feeling mentally exhausted even when he hadn't done much physical work. His mind was overloaded, and it was affecting everything. One day, after forgetting a critical client request, Nathan realized that the problem wasn't effort, it was the lack of a system to capture his thoughts. Everything was in his head, and his head was full. Not in a structured way, not with a perfect plan, but simply listing everything that was on his mind. Tasks, ideas, reminders, concerns, anything that appeared, he wrote it down. At first it felt chaotic. The list kept growing, longer than he expected. But as he continued, something shifted. His mind became quieter. For the first time in a long time, he didn't feel the need to hold everything mentally. The thoughts that once circled endlessly were now visible, captured in one place. He could see what needed to be done instead of trying to remember it. And that visibility created clarity. The next step was organization. Nathan didn't try to manage everything at once. He simply began separating his notes into categories, tasks that needed immediate action, ideas for later, and things that could be scheduled. This gave structure to what was once a scattered mental load. The impact was immediate. When he sat down to work the next day, he didn't waste time thinking about what to do. He already knew. His attention stayed on one task because his mind was no longer pulling him in different directions, and when new thoughts appeared, he didn't try to remember them. He wrote them down, trusting that they wouldn't be lost. This is the power of externalizing your thoughts. When everything stays in your head, it competes for attention. When it is written down, it becomes manageable. You can see it, organize it, prioritize it. You move from confusion to clarity. From reaction to intention. Think about your own mind. How many things are you trying to remember right now? Tasks you need to complete, things you don't want to forget, ideas that come and go. Each one takes up space, each one adds to the noise, and over time, that noise becomes overwhelming. Writing things down is not just a productivity tool, it is a way to free your mind. You don't need a complicated system. You don't need perfect organization from the beginning. What you need is a habit. The habit of capturing everything instead of carrying everything. The habit of trusting a system instead of relying on memory. Nathan didn't become perfectly organized overnight, but he created a shift. His mind was no longer a crowded space. It became a place for thinking, for focusing, for creating, and that change improved not just his work, but his sense of control. You can create the same shift. Start simple. Take a notebook or any tool you prefer and begin writing. Capture everything, tasks, ideas, reminders. Don't judge, don't organize immediately, just get it out. Then over time begin to structure it. Decide what matters, what can wait, and what needs action. This is day 10 of your organized life. Not a day of perfection, but a day of clarity. When you take everything out of your head and place it in a system, you create space. And in that space your focus strengthens, your stress decreases, and your ability to act becomes sharper than ever before. Chapter 11. Eliminate decisions that drain your energy. Every day you make more decisions than you realize: what to wear, what to eat, what to do first, when to start, how to respond, what deserves your attention. These choices seem small on their own, but together they create a constant mental load, and the more decisions you make, the more your energy gets depleted. By the time you reach the important parts of your day, your mind is already tired. This is called decision fatigue. It doesn't happen suddenly. It builds gradually, quietly reducing your ability to think clearly, focus deeply, and act with intention. You may not notice it in the moment, but you feel its effects. You hesitate more, you delay more, and you choose easier tasks instead of meaningful ones. Not because you lack discipline, but because your mental energy has already been used up. An organized life removes unnecessary decisions. When your day is filled with constant choices, you are always reacting, but when certain parts of your life are predefined, your mind becomes free to focus on what truly matters. You don't waste energy deciding what to do next. You already know, and that clarity creates strength. Oliver Grant learned this through burnout. He was a startup founder managing a growing company, constantly making decisions from strategic planning to daily operations. At first, he thrived on it. The fast pace, the constant problem-solving, the feeling of being involved in everything. But over time, the pressure built. His days became exhausting, not physically but mentally. From the moment he woke up, he was making choices: what to prioritize, how to respond, what to fix, what to delay. Even small decisions began to feel heavy. By the afternoon, he found himself avoiding important tasks, choosing easier ones, or delaying decisions altogether. He told himself he just needed to push harder, but pushing harder didn't solve the problem, it made it worse. One day, after making a series of poor decisions that affected his business, Oliver realized something had to change. He wasn't lacking intelligence or effort, he was overloaded with choices. Instead of trying to improve his decision-making, he decided to reduce the number of decisions he had to make. He started with simple areas of his life. He created a fixed morning routine, removing the need to decide how to start his day. He simplified his wardrobe, choosing a small set of clothes he could rotate without thinking. He planned his meals in advance, eliminating daily choices around food. These changes seemed minor, almost insignificant, but they removed dozens of small decisions from his day. Then he applied the same idea to his work. He set clear time blocks for different types of tasks: deep work, meetings, and communication. Instead of deciding throughout the day what to focus on, he followed a predefined structure. He also limited when he would check messages, reducing constant interruptions and reactive thinking. At first it felt restrictive, but soon it felt freeing. With fewer decisions to make, his mind became sharper. He had more energy for the tasks that truly mattered. He stopped feeling overwhelmed by small choices and started focusing on meaningful ones. His work improved, his stress decreased, and his confidence returned. This is the power of reducing decisions. Not every choice deserves your attention. Not every detail needs to be reconsidered every day. The more you can automate, simplify, and standardize, the more mental energy you preserve. And that energy is what allows you to perform at your best. Think about your own day. How many unnecessary decisions are you making? How often do you stop and think about things that could have been decided in advance? These moments may seem small, but they add up. They slowly drain your focus, leaving you with less energy for what truly matters. Eliminating decisions does not mean losing control. It means creating structure. It means deciding once, so you don't have to decide again. It means building routines that guide your actions without requiring constant thought. Oliver didn't remove all decisions from his life, but he removed enough to make a difference. He stopped wasting energy on things that didn't matter and started directing that energy toward what did. That shift allowed him to lead his business more effectively and live his life with greater clarity. You can create the same shift. Look for areas in your life where decisions repeat daily. Your mornings, your meals, your routines, your work structure. These are opportunities to simplify. Create systems that reduce the need to think about the same things over and over again. This is day 11 of your organized life. Not a day of perfection, but a day of simplification. When you eliminate unnecessary decisions, you protect your energy. And when your energy is protected, your focus becomes stronger, your actions become clearer, and your results begin to reflect it. Chapter 12. Reset your life every week before it falls apart. Progress is not built by daily effort alone. It is sustained by reflection. You can follow routines, complete tasks, and stay busy every day, but without stepping back to evaluate where you are going, you slowly drift off course. What once felt structured begins to feel repetitive. What once felt meaningful starts to lose direction, and before you realize it, you are working hard without moving forward. This is why most people fall apart. Not because they stop trying, but because they stop adjusting. A weekly reset brings your life back into alignment. It gives you a moment to pause, to review, and to correct your direction before small problems become bigger ones. Without it, mistakes repeat, priorities blur, and your system begins to weaken. With it, you regain clarity, control, and purpose. The idea is simple. Step out of your routine for a short period each week and look at your life from a higher perspective. David Clark discovered the importance of this after years of feeling stuck. He was a high school teacher who followed a consistent daily routine. He woke up on time, went to work, completed his lessons, and returned home. On the surface, everything seemed stable, but internally, he felt stagnant. His days felt repetitive, his progress felt limited, and his sense of growth slowly disappeared. He kept telling himself he just needed to work harder, to improve his habits, to stay consistent. But consistency alone wasn't solving the problem. He was repeating the same actions without questioning whether they were leading him anywhere meaningful. One weekend, after reflecting on another week that felt exactly like the last, David decided to do something different. Instead of continuing his routine, he sat down with a notebook and asked himself a few simple questions. What did I accomplish this week? What didn't go well? What needs to change? At first, the answers were unclear. He wasn't used to thinking this way, but as he continued, patterns began to appear. He noticed how certain tasks consumed time without adding value. He realized that some of his efforts were misplaced, while other important areas were being ignored. For the first time, he saw his week not as a series of days, but as a whole. That awareness changed how he approached the next week. David began setting aside time every weekend for a reset. It didn't take hours. Just a focused period where he reviewed his past week and planned the next. He looked at what worked, what didn't, and what needed adjustment. He refined his priorities, reorganized his schedule, and made small corrections before the new week began. Over time, this practice transformed his sense of control. Instead of drifting through his routine, he began guiding it. Instead of repeating the same patterns, he began improving them. His weeks became more intentional, his progress more visible, and his mindset more focused. He no longer felt stuck because he was constantly adjusting his direction. This is the purpose of a weekly reset. It is not about perfection, it is about awareness. It is about creating a moment where you step back and see clearly. Without that moment, you remain inside your routine, unable to recognize what needs to change. With it, you gain the ability to correct your path before it leads you further away from your goals. Think about your own life. When was the last time you paused and reviewed your week? Not briefly, not casually, but with intention. Without this habit, your days blur together. You stay busy, but you don't improve. You move, but you don't progress. A weekly reset breaks that cycle. It allows you to learn from your own actions. It helps you identify what truly matters. It gives you the opportunity to start each week with clarity instead of confusion. And most importantly, it keeps your system alive. A system without reflection becomes rigid. A system with reflection becomes adaptable. David didn't change everything at once, but he made one consistent commitment to review and reset every week. That simple habit created a continuous improvement loop that kept him aligned, focused, and growing. You can create the same loop in your life. Set aside time once a week, review what happened, identify what needs to change, plan what matters. Keep it simple, but keep it consistent. This is not an extra step, it is what keeps everything else working. This is day 12 of your organized life. Not a day of perfection, but a day of realignment. When you reset regularly, you prevent your life from drifting, and when you stay aligned, your progress becomes steady, intentional, and lasting. Chapter 13. Protect your time like it's your only asset. Time is the one resource you cannot earn back, replace, or increase. You can improve your skills, grow your income, and rebuild your energy. But once time is gone, it is gone permanently. Yet most people treat it casually. They allow interruptions, distractions, and other people's priorities to take control of it. They give it away without realizing what they are losing. Unorganized life requires a different mindset. It requires you to see time as your most valuable asset and to protect it with intention. The challenge is not always external. It is not just about other people demanding your attention. It is also about how easily you allow your focus to be broken. Every notification, every message, every unexpected request pulls you away from what you were doing, and each time you shift your attention, it takes effort to return. This constant switching creates a fragmented day where nothing receives your full focus. Sophia Turner lived in this pattern for years. She was a graphic designer working with multiple clients, each with their own expectations and deadlines. Her work required creativity, focus, and uninterrupted time, but her reality was very different. Her phone buzzed constantly. Emails arrived throughout the day. Clients sent last-minute changes, and she felt the need to respond immediately. She told herself she was being responsible. She believed that staying available meant being professional. But over time, the constant interruptions began to take a toll. Her work sessions were broken into small pieces. What should have been deep, focused work turned into scattered effort. Projects took longer to complete, and the quality began to suffer. She worked longer hours, thinking that more time would solve the problem. But more time only meant more interruptions. The real issue wasn't the amount of time she had, it was how unprotected it was. One day, after struggling to complete a project that should have taken half the time, Sophia realized that something needed to change. She didn't need more hours, she needed better control over the hours she already had. She started by creating boundaries. Instead of being available all day, she defined specific periods for focused work. During those periods, her phone was placed away, notifications were turned off, and communication was paused. At first, this felt uncomfortable. There was a fear of missing something important, a fear of appearing unavailable, but she stayed with it. She also set clear expectations with her clients. She communicated when she would be available and when she would be working. This simple shift reduced unnecessary interruptions and allowed her to work with greater focus. The results were immediate. With uninterrupted time, her work improved. She completed tasks faster, with better quality. She no longer felt the need to rush or multitask. Her mind was fully engaged in one thing at a time, and as her results improved, so did her confidence. This is what happens when you protect your time. You create space for deep work. You allow your mind to stay focused long enough to produce meaningful results. You stop reacting to everything and start directing your attention where it matters most. Think about your own day. How often is your focus interrupted? How often do you allow small distractions to take control of your time? These moments may seem minor, but they add up. They break your concentration, reduce your efficiency, and keep you from doing your best work. Protecting your time is not about isolating yourself completely. It is about being intentional. It is about deciding when you will be available and when you will focus. It is about creating boundaries that support your goals instead of constantly reacting to external demands. Sophia didn't eliminate all interruptions, but she reduced them enough to make a difference. She created blocks of time where her attention was fully protected, and those blocks became the most productive parts of her day. You can do the same. Start by identifying when you need your focus the most. Create time blocks where distractions are minimized. Communicate your boundaries clearly, and most importantly, respect your own time, because if you don't, others won't either. This is day 13 of your organized life, not a day of perfection, but a day of protection. When you treat your time as your most valuable asset, you begin to use it differently, and when your time is used with intention, your results begin to reflect it in ways that are both visible and lasting. Chapter 14. Say no without explaining yourself. Every yes you give has a cost, even when it feels small in the moment. It takes your time, your energy, your focus, and quietly shifts your priorities away from what you had planned. Most people don't realize how much of their disorganization comes not from what they choose to do, but from what they agree to do for others. They say yes out of habit, out of politeness, out of fear of disappointing someone, and over time their schedule fills with things that were never truly theirs. An organized life requires boundaries, and boundaries require the ability to say no. The difficulty is not in understanding this, it is in applying it. Saying no feels uncomfortable because it challenges the way you see yourself. You want to be helpful, reliable, and agreeable. You don't want to appear rude or selfish. So instead of saying no clearly, you hesitate, you over-explain, or you agree and hope you'll find time later. But that later often becomes stress, pressure, and frustration. Every unnecessary yes creates future chaos. Michael Adams understood this pattern well. He was a consultant working with multiple clients, known for being dependable and responsive. His reputation was built on always being available, always saying yes, always finding a way to help. At first, this approach worked. It brought him opportunities, built strong relationships, and made him feel valued. But over time, it began to overwhelm him. His schedule filled with requests, some important, many not. Clients asked for extra work outside the original scope. Colleagues reached out for favors. Small commitments added up until his days were packed from morning to evening. He found himself rushing through tasks, missing deadlines, and feeling constantly behind. The worst part was that he knew the problem. He knew he was overcommitting, but each time a new request came, he felt the same hesitation. Saying no felt uncomfortable, so he said yes, telling himself he would manage somehow. He didn't. One evening, after working late to catch up on tasks he never planned to take on, Michael realized something had to change. He wasn't lacking discipline or effort, he was lacking boundaries. Instead of responding immediately, he gave himself a moment to think. Then he did something different. He said no, not with a long explanation, not with an excuse, but simply and clearly. It felt uncomfortable at first. There was a brief moment of tension, a feeling that he might disappoint the other person. But something surprising happened. The world didn't fall apart. The relationship didn't break. The moment passed, and life continued. That experience changed how he saw boundaries. Michael began practicing this consistently. He didn't say no to everything, but he became selective. He evaluated each request based on his priorities. If it didn't align, he declined it respectfully, without over-explaining. Over time, it became easier. The discomfort faded, replaced by a sense of control. As his boundaries strengthened, his schedule became clearer. He had more time for meaningful work, more energy to focus, and less stress to manage. His quality of work improved, and so did his confidence. not because he was doing more, but because he was doing what mattered. This is the power of saying no. It is not about rejecting people. It is about protecting your time. It is about ensuring that your energy is spent on what truly matters. Every time you say no to something unnecessary, you are saying yes to something important. Think about your own life. How often do you agree to things you don't really want to do? How often do you overcommit, knowing it will stretch your time and energy? These moments may seem small, but they accumulate. They fill your schedule with distractions and leave little room for focus. Saying no is a skill, and like any skill, it improves with practice. You don't need to justify every decision. You don't need to explain yourself in detail. A simple, respectful response is enough. The more you practice, the more natural it becomes. And the more natural it becomes, the more control you gain over your life. Michael didn't change overnight, but he made a decision to stop overcommitting and start protecting his time. That decision created a shift in how he worked, how he felt, and how he lived. You can make the same decision. You are not responsible for everything. You are responsible for what you choose to take on. And when you become intentional with your choices, your life becomes more organized, more focused, and more aligned with what truly matters. This is day 14 of your organized life, not a day of perfection, but a day of boundaries. When you learn to say no without explaining yourself, you reclaim your time. And when your time is protected, your life begins to move in the direction you choose. Chapter 15. Become the person who lives in order, not chaos. Reaching this point is not about finishing a process. It is about becoming someone new through repetition, awareness, and consistent action. Over the past days, you have not just learned ideas, you have practiced a way of living that replaces confusion with clarity, reaction with intention, and chaos with control. And now, on day 21, the question is no longer what you need to do. The question is who you have become. An organized life is not built in a single decision. It is built through daily alignment. Each step you have taken, from confronting the mess, clearing your space, installing systems, protecting your time, and setting boundaries, has shaped your behavior. And your behavior, repeated consistently, shapes your identity. This is where the real transformation happens, not in what you plan, but in what you consistently practice. By now, you have seen something important. When your days are structured, your mind feels clearer. When your priorities are defined, your actions become sharper. When distractions are reduced, your focus strengthens. None of these changes happened by accident. They happened because you followed a system. But this is where many people lose their progress. They treat the system as a temporary challenge instead of a permanent standard. They complete the days, feel the improvement, and then slowly return to old habits. Not intentionally, but gradually. A missed routine here, a delayed task there, a moment of distraction that becomes a pattern again. That is why this chapter matters. Day 21 is not the end. It is the point where repetition becomes identity. Everything you have done from day 1 to day 14 must continue. Not perfectly, not rigidly, but consistently. You must keep confronting the mess when it appears. You must keep your space clear. You must continue following your system, protecting your time, limiting your priorities, and setting boundaries. These are not temporary actions. They are the foundation of how you live now. Consistency is what turns effort into identity. You don't need to add more. You don't need to search for new strategies. What you need is to stay focused on what already works. The system you have built is enough. The habits you have practiced are enough. The structure you have created is enough. If you continue, focus becomes your responsibility, moving forward. There will be days when you feel less motivated. There will be moments when distractions return, when old habits try to pull you back, when it feels easier to ignore the system you have built. That is normal. But this time, you are not starting from zero. You have awareness, you have structure, you know what works. And because you know what works, you have a choice. You can return to chaos, or you can continue building order. An organized life does not mean everything is perfect. It means you are aware enough to correct yourself when things begin to slip. It means you don't allow small mistakes to turn into patterns. It means you return to your system again and again until it becomes natural. This is how long-term change is created. From this point forward, your focus should not be on doing more. It should be on maintaining what you have built. Protect your mornings, keep your priorities clear, continue writing things down, reset your week, eliminate unnecessary decisions, guard your time, say no when needed. These are not steps you complete once, they are actions you repeat for life, and as you repeat them, something deeper happens. You stop forcing yourself to be organized, you simply are. Your actions become automatic, your environment supports your goals, your mind stays clear because you have systems in place. You don't rely on motivation because you no longer need to. Structure carries you forward. This is what it means to become the system. You are no longer trying to fix your life. You are living it with intention. You are not reacting to chaos. You are preventing it. You are not searching for control. You are maintaining it. And that is the real success. Day 21 is your confirmation, not that everything is complete, but that everything is in motion. You have built the foundation. Now your responsibility is to protect it. Stay focused, stay consistent. Return to the principles whenever needed, because the moment you stop applying them, chaos begins to return. But the moment you continue, order becomes stronger. You now have what most people never build, a system that works. And if you continue to follow it, not just for 21 days, but for the days ahead, your life will not return to what it was. It will continue to improve, to strengthen, and to move forward with clarity and control. This is your organized life. Conclusion. Order does not arrive in your life by chance. It is created, protected, and reinforced through the choices you make every single day. What you have built over these past 21 days is not just a set of habits or routines. It is a foundation, a way of living that replaces confusion with clarity, hesitation with action, and inconsistency with control. You have seen what happens when you take ownership of your time, your space, and your decisions. You have experienced the difference between reacting to your day and leading it, and most importantly, you have proven to yourself that change is not something distant or complicated. It is something you create through simple, repeated actions. The truth is, most people will never reach this point. Not because they lack ability, but because they lack consistency. They start with good intentions, but they stop when it becomes uncomfortable. They search for new methods instead of committing to proven ones. They wait for motivation instead of building structure, and as a result, they remain stuck in cycles of starting and stopping. But you are no longer in that cycle. You now understand that organization is not about perfection. It is about alignment. It is about creating a system that supports your life instead of working against it. When your environment is clear, your mind becomes focused. When your priorities are defined, your actions become meaningful. When your time is protected, your progress becomes steady. This is not a temporary improvement. It is a long-term advantage. From this point forward, your responsibility is simple, but not always easy. Continue applying what you have learned. Continue returning to your system when things feel off. Continue protecting the structure you have built. Because the moment you stop, even slightly, old patterns will try to return, not immediately, but gradually. And that is how most people lose progress, not in a single moment, but in small, repeated lapses. Stay aware of that. Stay focused on what matters. You do not need to do more. You need to stay consistent with what already works. The system you have built is enough to guide you as long as you follow it. Remember this clearly. Discipline creates freedom. The more organized your life becomes, the more space you create for what truly matters. Less stress, less confusion, fewer distractions, and more clarity, more control, and more meaningful progress. Over time, these small daily actions will compound. Weeks will turn into months, months into years, and one day you will look back and realize that your life is no longer scattered or uncertain. It is structured, intentional, and moving forward in the direction you chose. That is the power of an organized life. You are no longer someone who is trying to get things together. You are someone who lives with order, someone who makes decisions with clarity, someone who takes control instead of waiting for change, and that identity will shape everything that comes next. So move forward with intention, protect what you have built, stay consistent, even when it feels simple, even when it feels repetitive, because in that repetition lies your strength. This is not the end of your journey, it is the beginning of a life that finally works the way it should.